Cooking your way through life.
Yo. Oh, hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Cooking Way Through Life with me, Chef Drake. Today we're doing bison chili. Now, this recipe is also in the cookbook, so you can get the cookbook Amazon.com worldwide as well as BarnesNoble.com. But just like any of the recipes in my cookbook, they're all ready for you to interpret however you like. I like using the bison myself because I actually started doing this recipe when I was working in Alaska on a small cruise line. And I just like the fact that the bison was a little less fatty, but had really great flavor, and you can really adapt it to whatever you like. But you can use this with turkey. I've done this recipe with a vegan chili. I don't use beans in mine, but you can add beans, of course, with vegan chili to give a little bit more protein, a little bit more mouthfeel. But this is all up to you. Without further ado, let's get started. So for today, what we're gonna do is we're gonna start by cooking down or rendering down some bacon. Once again, we're gonna render that bacon fat down, and then that's gonna give us the base for everything. So cold pan today. In my cold pan goes the bacon. Remember, when you're rendering, you wanna make sure you start with a cold pan. I really want the fat to come out of the bacon, but I'm also gonna give it a little help today because of the fact that I like flavor. So a little oil, not too much, just kind of get it started. And I'm also gonna get a lot of oil from the bison itself. So once I get this mixed together, little oil on that bacon, I wanna do the hardest thing there is to do for the home cook. I know because I work with a lot of you, nothing. I wanna leave it alone. I wanna let that bacon go and let it render down. And then while it's rendering, then we can think about what we want to use for our toppings. All right, so now my bacon is rendered down. It's crispy. I have all that fat that's inside of there. This is gonna be the base for everything. We need to add in our vegetables. We were building this flavor. I know that this is a very tricky territory because we don't like to say it, but chili is also the same thing as a soup. So we have to build it like a soup base. So we're gonna go in with some onions. We're gonna go in with some bell peppers and some garlic in there as well. And I'm gonna do the first step of flavoring as far as seasoning. So I made a chili powder. And this is just a mixture of all the seasonings that I love. You can use whatever chili mix that you like. And I'm gonna go ahead and season this all together. So this is the first season that I'm doing, the first time that I'm really getting this all seasoned together. And we're gonna cook these vegetables down and let them soften, or basically cook down a little bit so that they can develop flavor and cook for a long period of time without caramelizing. Now I can do this because inside of my chili season, I also have salt. If you don't have salt or you're trying to use low sodium, add a teeny bit of salt here. I promise it works because it's gonna draw out the moisture. That moisture inside of here is gonna let your vegetable cook a lot longer without them starting to caramelize. We want them to soften up and we want this to really build this flavor. If you have a chili and it's just a one-note chili, it's really not that great. This is gonna give us a lot of flavor. Now, once this happens, I can already smell it. If I start sneezing, sorry in advance. I'm in Georgia right now and the allergies always get me. I'm gonna go ahead and add in some sweetness here. So, gonna go ahead and put in my brown sugar. And this is also gonna give me a little bit more of a caramelized molasses note. Which brings us to molasses. We're gonna add a little molasses in here a little bit. As I said, this recipe is in my cookbook, so you always can get this recipe out. Before we add the molasses and the soy sauce and the liquid smoke, which is optional, we're gonna go ahead and brown off the bison. I want the bison to be browned off so that when I add those seasonings, it can really absorb into that bison. I'm just breaking up my bison with my spatula. And then once it's broken up, I'm gonna let it cook to about 75%. And that's because I still need to add in a couple ingredients. I don't want my bison to be fully cooked before that happens. because then it won't develop the flavor that I want it to have. So let's go ahead and get this cooked down to about 75%. Got that cooked down about 75%. And let's add in our liquid ingredients. I call it the liquid gold, especially that molasses. Really changes the game. That soy sauce, molasses, you get the sweet, you get the salty there, a little bit of that umami flavor from something like a soy sauce here. Really changes up your chili, in my opinion. I'm not a huge chili fan originally, but then when I was working in Alaska and I had to make chili so much, I actually became more of a chili fan. Once this goes in, we can add in our last big ingredient, which are going to be tomatoes. Now on my recipe, I tell you to put half crushed tomatoes and half chopped tomatoes, or your diced tomatoes. Now this is also optional as well, because if you live somewhere that you have amazing tomatoes, go ahead and use those fresh tomatoes. I'm using canned tomatoes. I'm in Georgia right now and it's fall. It's almost Thanksgiving time. So for me, that means that tomatoes out here, usually, not everywhere, but most of the tomatoes out here are not that great. If you live somewhere like here, or especially somewhere colder, but I can find my pocket. My coat has pockets. If you live somewhere colder or somewhere like this, you'll find that most of the time, my tomatoes are just red cardboard. So in this case, I want to go ahead and use the tomatoes that's in a can because they have the best flavor. They're picked at the peak ripeness, and they're going to have the best flavor overall. So it's going to cook this down, but before it gets too cooked down, I'm also going to go ahead and add my seasonings again. Remember, this is just like building a soup. So I added seasoning in the beginning, I need to season through. Then once it cooks down and my bison is cooked all the way through, I'll taste it and adjust the last time. Okay, guys, so as my best friend Spencer says, the chili looks like chili. You literally cook the chili down until it looks like chili. So all of your liquids start to really evaporate a little bit more. You can add a little water to it if you need to, but for the most part, you'll see that those tomatoes will start to burst and everything comes together very, very nicely. Now, the one thing I will say is, always up to you. Make sure that you taste and season accordingly. Very good. I'm going to use my spatula here, help guide my chili into my bowl. Now, this is not one of the most beautiful dishes that you can plate, but if you know me, then you know that I try to plate everything as beautiful as possible, because I'm a huge believer that we eat with our eyes first. And since you eat with your eyes first, you want to make sure it looks as good as possible. So right in front of me are different things we're going to use to really enhance the way our chili looks. But not only enhance it, we're also using this to give more flavor. So first off, use a little cheese. And as you notice with me, I'll try to go right in the center. I'll try to do as center as possible. And this is because I'm always thinking about the outside and everything of the chili. So I want you to see the chili itself. I don't want to cover it all the way. We do a little dollop of daisy, a little sour cream here. Now, all these things that I'm adding are optional, but they do place a purpose. You know, that cheese really brings it together in a little cheesy way, of course. The dollop of daisy, that sour cream, breaks down everything with a little bit of that, can't think of the word, dairy product. So it's gonna break everything down. I also have some pickled onions here. Talk about pickling in one of our tips and tricks videos, because I love pickled onions. I think you can use them on so many different things. I'm also going to use some fresh jalapeno peppers. And then last but not least, some freshly chopped scallions. And as I mentioned, this is just for me. Your toppings on your chilies can be anything you like. They can range so far. But for me, it's a perfect bowl of chili. Great for the fall. All right. Thank you once again for joining me for another Cooking with Your Life episode. Remember, you can get this recipe and more in my cookbook, Cooking Your Way Through Life. But also remember to please subscribe, share, and like so we can get as many fans and followers over here so we can really build this pretty much platform up. I'm also going to be having some tips and tricks dropping, as well as some extra bites that'll be coming out throughout. And don't forget that the podcast Cooking Through Life drops every Thursday. So once again, see you next time.
Cooking your way through life. Cooking your way through life.
For watching today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe even learned something. You know what to do next. Please hit those like, share, and subscribe buttons below and have a great day.